Unearthing the truth.
I want the truth!
This is the truth. With
Welcome
John
to this week's
Gordon.
show. I'm John Gordon, and we've got a lot to cover and unpack for you today. We're going to talk about the Olympics. That won't take long. Then we're going to delve into the attempted assassination on the 45th President of the United States. And we have got a lot, I mean a lot, to unpack. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with Elon Musk turning the tables on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. More on that to come. Are you enjoying the Olympics? I'm not. In fact, I have watched this much, zero of my time on the Olympics. Look, I love France. I love Paris. I was so excited about the opening ceremonies. I was prevented from watching it because of other commitments. And I was going to go back and watch it. I was going to stream it later. And then the next morning, I became aware of a vignette in which the Olympics mocked the Last Supper. Well, I was dumbfounded. I mean, I believe 2 billion Christians, maybe 3 billion Christians on the earth. And NBC and the Olympic Committee is going to allow this mockery to alienate every Christian on earth. I went and watched it. I looked at it. I was highly offended. And I said, forget it. And then we see yesterday, or actually Wednesday now, or Thursday, that the Italian female boxer, after 45 seconds, she surrendered. She quit because she realized that she was boxing what the media are calling an individual who failed to meet the gender requirements. In other words, he was a dude, and she quit, as she should have, and as every single female boxer in the Olympics should quit in mass. Just stick it right in the Olympic Committee's eye for allowing a male to compete in a female competition. I think it is absolutely scandalous, and it's revolting to me. And I feel for the women who have trained and worked so hard to get to this point, and then they're going to give the medal to a guy. I don't have the words. And frankly, I don't know that I have the temperament to deal with it. I just simply choose not to watch. So there you have it. We've spent a lot of time last week talking about the attempted assassination on President Trump. The attempt occurred on Saturday, July the 13th. It was 2 days before the beginning of the Republican National Convention. The daily feature of the news has, at this point, done exactly what people that were behind this would hope. I promised you last week that I was not going to allow it to be forgotten, glossed over, or swept under the rug, not for our listeners here on The Truth. So I have spent probably 60 to 70 hours, and I think that's a conservative estimate, of studying the attempted assassination on President Trump. I have looked at every single angle. I've looked at every single video. I have read every piece that I could get my hands on. And I have concluded that I believe, as I don't know if you recall, I've said on the show before, I look at things on a continuum. I put the most extremes on either end, and then I work to fill in the middle. So on the ends, I put one extreme that Crooks acted alone without help or coordination from anybody else. I guess complementary to that, I would put on that same axis or same point on the continuum that the Secret Service acted completely ineptly, that they just showed their sheer incompetence. Now, I would step one step out on the continuum and give them the benefit of the doubt slightly that they just became complacent. After, I guess, how many years now? 8 years of Trump's campaigning and holding rallies without an incident. One thing that helps me in this is that I've also told you before, I am a pilot. I have been a pilot since I was 15 years old. I take the responsibility very seriously, and I have read intently and studied intently how to be a safe pilot. I can tell you that after about 600 or 800 hours, this phenomenon occurs where experienced pilots start to encounter the accident numbers go up, which is counterintuitive. You would think that with experience, the accident rates would steeply decline. Not true. And the reason that they increase is one simple phenomenon: complacency. And I think there is a possibility that the Secret Service grew complacent in their protection of Donald Trump because of the fact that they've been doing it for so long without incident. Now, that's what we know. Have there been no incidences? I highly doubt that. So I don't give this theory of complacency much attention, but I think it warrants consideration. I think all of these warrant consideration. So one possibility is Crooks acted alone. Another possibility is Crooks was working with other bad actors. And rumors continue to circulate about these possibilities. We'll dive into it. The third possibility is that Crooks was working in a coordinated fashion with members of the United States government. There are reasons for us to consider this. I wouldn't say that I am prepared to conclude this, but it goes on the list of considerations. And then fourth, that there was no coordination within our government or the Secret Service, but that the Secret Service became aware and were ever presently aware of threats against the president, the former president. And so while they may not have had any direct involvement, they just opened the door. They opened the door wide open for this would-be assassin to come in, take his position without detection, and fire off 8 rounds of ammunition from his AR-15 rifle. All right, so let's break it down. I've divided it into 3 sections for you today. The first, we're going to focus on the failure. We spent a lot of time on this last week, so I'm not going to get too bogged down in it, but I think it's necessary in order to set the scene and to look at the colossal failures of the Secret Service, which they themselves now admit and concede. So the first failure was that the AGR building, the American Glass Research Building, was outside the perimeter that the Secret Service established to protect the president. Well, that is just absurd in hindsight. Now, let me just stop real quick and mention, I've never particularly cared for Monday morning quarterbacks. And now I'm finding myself to be falling into that realm, but I think with good reason. But the AGR building, we are Monday morning quarterbacking all of this. And again, with good reason. But the AGR building was out of the established zone of protection, the perimeter of protection for the rally on July the 13th. That turned out to be a near fatal mistake. And it was easily within the range of an AR-15 weapon. So it should have been within the protected zone. But why wasn't it? Well, they are going to lead us to believe that it was because of a lack of resources and a lack of manpower. Well, I don't buy that. I'm sorry. The Secret Service has a $3 billion a year budget. They employ 8,000 people. And you're telling me that they couldn't station somebody on top of that building and all of the buildings behind it, for that matter, that were part of the AGR building complex. So it is just mind-boggling and inexcusable and inexplicable that they would not have protected the top of that building. So to add further a cloud around this is that I've analyzed so carefully, how did Crooks get up on the building? And there are two differing theories on this. One is that he gained a foothold to scale up the building with his backpack on the southern corner of that building. Well, I don't believe that one, and I'll tell you why. There were two windows in a building directly behind the building that we're now all so familiar with. There were two open windows directly behind the AGR building that we know that Crooks took his position on. Well, those open windows happened to be local law enforcement sniper teams. It is believed that one sniper team was on the second floor and one on the first floor, or possibly both sniper teams were on the second floor. I'm conflicted. I've looked at the conflicting data on both of those. Some camera shots indicate that the second sniper team was on the first floor. The official version that have learned lead me to believe that both sniper teams were on the second floor. You could not see Crooks out of those two windows in the position that he took up. You'd have to stick your head out of the window and crane your eyes to the left to see him there. But you would obviously see him straight away if you looked straight out of either of those two windows when he scaled the building. I mean, you just could not miss it. Now, there are reports that Crooks had been identified. I mean, no, I think it's been substantiated that he had been identified well before he scaled the building. He was observed on a picnic table on the northwest corner of the AGR building, sitting there as one police officer basically clocked out for duty, as was planned. There's nothing sinister about him leaving. It was just his shift was over. He was leaving, I believe, to go to another assignment. And so as he was exiting the building, he radioed in that there was a suspicious character at that picnic table. Well, that caused other police officers to go and search for him, and they did not find him at the picnic table, but an officer did spot him, and he was spotted looking sketchy. And so he actually took pictures of him. And this is in somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes before the first shots were fired. And those pictures were relayed to the Secret Service, who I don't know what the level of importance that they assigned to it. But what we do know is that in spite of that information, they allowed Trump to take the stage. That in itself is a huge failure. And Crooks, in preparation for his mission, we know that he flew a drone over the site the morning of. And what is further troublesome is that the local law enforcement, local police, suggested to the Secret Service that they fly a drone over the site, and they were told not to. Now, that's very suspicious to me. Why would you tell them not to? But Crooks was allowed, not allowed, but he got away with flying a drone over the venue in the early hours of that Saturday morning. But then where did Crooks then scale the building? Well, there is a belief that he was able to get up on top of that building through one of two other ways. One would have been to have scaled the building behind the famous AGR building and to have gotten on that building about in the middle of it. And I think that that's probably a pretty realistic scenario. He may have been able to have gotten up on the building from the middle of the building itself. In either event, he would have avoided recognition from the two local police officers that were snipers in those windows that I mentioned. He would have avoided detection. Now, what's really disturbing, however, is that in just the moments leading up to the first shots fired, one of the actual victims of the shooting, who was injured but survived, had video footage that he took on his cell phone when he was seated behind and to the right as you look at President Trump. This footage that we're going to show you here, this clip, shows, if you look where the red circle is, this shows Crooks running across the top of the building, disappearing, and then seconds later, re-emerging over on the right-hand side of your screen if you're watching us. You can watch us every Saturday, by the way, on YouTube Live, rumble.com, and getter.com. Hit the live button. Look for the live shots, John Gordon Truth. We're there every Saturday for you, as well as on the John Fredericks Media Network. Okay, so Crooks, I believe, got up either by jumping over, by jumping up on the building behind the now famous AGR building, and then walking across. There's a breezeway there that he could have jumped on the roof of and walked across and then hopped up. I think that's a very plausible explanation, except there were so many cops out in the area where he would have had to have gotten onto that roof. That's the reason that I don't readily accept that. I think he probably jumped up on the roof one way or the other. I don't think that he used a ladder. The ladder that we talked about last week was actually put there after the event by the police. And we also know that Crooks bought a ladder, but that was not at the scene. So he, one way or the other, climbed up a gutter or jumped up on an air conditioning unit and then used features of the side of the building to climb on up, got on the middle of the roof, and then took his sniper position. But he did so and avoided detection. The snipers in the corner windows could not have seen him unless they were actually looking out and craning their necks and looking to the left, to their left. This picture, I think, is one of the most telling pictures. For our radio listeners, this is a picture of where Crooks took the sniper position, where he crouched down on top of that roof, and he was at the very top of the roof, and he assumed the sniper position. And when you look at it from Crooks's angle, and this is something that I think is very important. If you look at it from Crooks's angle, his position is completely blocked by the Secret Service snipers who were positioned just behind Trump on the north side. In fact, they could not see the would-be assassin, the Secret Service snipers. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the thing that really gets my suspicions going. This kid was either so good and so smart and so calculating that he figured out that this was the only possible place in that entire venue that he could have taken a position and gone undetected. He would have climbed up on the roof where he was undetected from the local law enforcement snipers stationed behind him and off to his right now. And he would have avoided detection from the Secret Service snipers who were positioned at his 12 o'clock position, but hidden. Both of them were hidden. The snipers hidden from Crooks, and Crooks hidden from the Secret Service snipers by a very large tree that obstructed both of their views. So what did that leave? It left the Secret Service snipers on the southern roof to President Trump's left that would have acquired the target once they heard shots. So it's very complicated, folks, and I hope our radio listeners are able to have followed this. But the point that I'm trying to make in all of this analysis right now is that Crooks got the one place, the only place in the that I can determine in the entire venue that he could have taken up a sniper's position and gone largely undetected. Undetected by the snipers behind him and to the right, undetected by the snipers directly in front of him at 12 o'clock. And I don't believe that the snipers on the southern roof would have realized that those northern snipers could not have seen where Crooks had taken a position. So did that happen by accident? Or was Crooks so smart and so cunning that he was able to determine that on his own? Or was this part of a larger plot where some very smart people helped him and facilitated and collaborated with him to have accomplished this? Now, I can tell you that I've spent the last 3 weeks analyzing this, and it was not until yesterday that I finally figured that little snippet out. And I think it is very important. Now, I didn't come up with that on my own. I came up with it by watching other YouTubers and people who are analyzing this. And there is just some great information out there. Okay, now, finally, during the planning stage, and I think this is very significant, there are two things I want to bring up at this point. One, and I know you've heard this by now, Thomas Matthew Crooks is seen in a BlackRock video, a commercial that was filmed 2 years earlier. Now, that commercial and the fact that Crooks was in it proves absolutely nothing. But it makes you curious. It makes you wonder. It makes us suspicious. Was that a coincidence, or does it go deeper than that? Well, for me, what makes it more suspicious, if you will, is that this company, Austin Private Wealth, shorted 12 million shares of the Trump media company the day before Crooks attempted to assassinate President Trump. Well, why is that important? So what? These people, Austin Private Wealth, got lucky and or almost got lucky, and they shorted 12 million shares of stock in Trump's media company that had Trump, the unthinkable and the unspeakable had happened. If President Trump had lost his life, that media company's worth would have gone probably to near zero in the flash of a split second. Well, so why bring it up? Because the Austin Private Wealth firm has direct ties to BlackRock. Now, let me give you the other side of that. Larry Fink, who is the head of BlackRock, and President Trump have enjoyed a decades-long friendship and relationship. And so I do not believe that if there was some collusion there, I don't think there's any reason to necessarily believe that it was from the very top, but it certainly makes you wonder. So zoom back, folks. Let's go to 30,000 feet and look at what we've just gone over. And I'm probably repeating myself at this point. Not one single thing that I have mentioned is really significant in terms of a lone gunman theory. But when you put them all together, I just don't see how Thomas Matthew Crooks could have been operating by himself. I just am not buying it. I think there is much more to the story than what we're being told. And I am moving out now on the continuum to the right where things get more suspicious. So let's look at Crooks, the case for Crooks acting alone. The main case would simply be that he was 20 years old. We're told that he didn't have any friends and that the Secret Service just had a colossal cascading series of failures. Okay. I mean, yeah, maybe. Then let's say that Crooks was actually recruited, aided and abetted in attempting to assassinate President Trump. And he did kill Corey Compouture, which makes him and any accomplices guilty of murder. And I wrote to the district attorney of Butler County, Pennsylvania, and I said, a murder occurred in your jurisdiction. Are you investigating it? Have you opened an investigation? And of course, I received no response to my email. But I hope that district attorney is working on it. But there is significant evidence that lead us to believe that this was coordinated and that it would have involved elements of our government. We talked about appearing in the BlackRock commercial in 2022. We talked about the Austin Private Wealth Group having shorted the 12 million shares in the Trump Media Company the day before the attempted assassination. We have talked about the narrative that we're told that Crooks was a loner. That's out of one side of Christopher Wray's mouth. Out of the other side of Christopher Wray's mouth, he says that they are aware that Crooks was communicating through encrypted apps with at least three individuals in foreign countries, and that they were trying to break into those apps and see what he was discussing with these people. We're told that he had no social media, but now that he does have some social media, that he was a loner, but now that he is communicating with at least three people in a foreign country. And this is the one that really gets my antennas up. The Secret Service claims to have no recordings of the radio traffic from Butler, Pennsylvania on July the 13th. I find that incredulous. This is worse than the 10 minutes of lost audio tape that Nixon had in the Watergate tapes. This is beyond the realm of belief to me. Yet we have all the local law enforcement traffic. And what that local law enforcement traffic reveals is that they were chattering about a suspicious person. They were delivering the information back to the command. The command allowed President Trump to go on the stage. They allowed President Trump to stay on the stage. And we know that they knew at least a full minute and 30 seconds, if not closer to 2 minutes, before the first shot was fired, that there was a suspicious person on the roof that may or may not have had a rifle. I can't say for certainty that the Secret Service was told that this person had a rifle, but I can say with certainty that he was on the roof and in a prone position. Now look, you got seconds to make a decision. If you're the Secret Service, let's give them some benefit of the doubt for a moment and say, okay, maybe this is a college kid that just got caught up in the moment and he scaled the building. Nobody saw him and he's up there looking as a spectator to see the rally. I can believe that. I can believe that thought would have entered somebody's mind and that would have been a reason not to have pulled the trigger and taken him out. But wouldn't you have gone and gotten the president off the stage? Wouldn't you have sent up a flare and said, stop immediately, get the president on the ground, protect him, or drag him off the stage, stop this event until we can sort out what is going on? It takes no leap of faith for me to conclude that. And that is a fact that I cannot get out of my mind, and I cannot give them a pass on. Now, the missing audio tapes, you can look at it one of two ways. I can't believe that it's unintentional. I just refuse to believe that somehow the tapes got erased or lost. I just will not accept that. I can accept that they erased them to CYA, and that's what a former Secret Service sniper has come forward. I think he still works for the Secret Service. He's become a whistleblower, and he said that CYA is the culture of the Secret Service. Okay? So maybe they lost, in quotation marks, the audio tapes of their radio traffic as a CYA. It violates no telling how many federal and state laws. It would be destruction of evidence proximate to a murder. You would go to jail for a very long time if it could be proven that you did that maliciously. And frankly, that is my suspicion. I cannot, as I said, I cannot get to the point where I can conceive under any circumstances that that radio traffic or text messages, which we haven't seen, would be erased innocently. Okay, let's move a little further out on the continuum. Let's say that this did not involve our government, but let's consider the possibility that there was an action from a foreign government. In the hours immediately following the attempted assassination, Congressman Walsh, he's actually from Florida, went on Fox News with Jesse Waters, and he had this to say.
I mean, I just talked to one of the agents a few hours ago. I talked to some Sunday. The agents are pissed. They're frustrated. They've repeatedly asked for resources. Donald Trump isn't your normal average former president. He's not Jimmy Carter sitting in the old folks' home. And oh, by the way, some other things are coming out, like the shooter had 3 encrypted accounts overseas. At the same time, we're having an Iranian plot. So, I mean, I think this is going to go much broader, much deeper, but the agents are going to hold her to accounts. Their lives on the lines, and she was not giving the resources they were requesting. But one other thing, Jesse, that Pittsburgh field office was the one responsible for the advance. That was clearly not done appropriately and distracted by Dr. Jill.
And the Pittsburgh field office was also responsible for covering up that bribery Ukraine tip that came in as well. Are you saying that you're getting information that says there's encrypted communications between Crooks and foreign sources?
No, what we know, and this was on the briefing we just received, he had 3 encrypted overseas accounts the FBI is trying to get into.
What do you mean by overseas accounts?
Well, we know that they were based in servers overseas, and so you've got to work over there with the FBI liaisons overseas to start getting into them through their authorities.
Do you believe this attempt on the former president's life has some sort of foreign nexus?
Well, we know the Iranians have been trying for years, not only him, but everybody, Pompeo and others, involved in the Soleimani strike. And we also know, it's finally come out, many of us have been fighting this for years, that they pulled National Security Advisor O'Brien's detail completely away. He's had to go to his own private security and local law enforcement. So there is all kinds of issues here, and we're going to get to the bottom of it starting on Monday.
Yeah, I'm just not so sure I believe everything that I'm being told about what's inside his phone yet. I just don't trust the people doing this investigation.
In the hours just after the assassination, here's a United States congressman saying that they have information. There were known plots to assassinate not only Donald Trump, but also Mike Pompeo as retaliation for their having taken out the Iranian terrorist who was a government army official. But regardless, that's a known threat. It was, and it is. And so that's not to be taken lightly. There are stories and reports of people being arrested at Butler, Pennsylvania, in a van with explosives. We don't have information about that, but there's suspicion that maybe these were Iranian actors, but we don't know that. I don't want to start rumors that we don't know. Right now, that is just a rumor. Yesterday, the Palm Beach Post reported, I think, a very interesting story. They report that a Chinese citizen is under arrest and in jail in West Palm Beach, Florida, for attempted trespass at Mar-a-Lago. Now, this person did not go to Mar-a-Lago once. He didn't go there twice. He went there as many as 3, if not 4 times, trying to get an audience with someone. And in 2 lines in this story that is owned by Gannett and USA Today, they reveal that this individual, Zihi Li, he's 38 years old, told the police that he had a document linking the Chinese government to the attempted assassination of President Trump. Okay, that's all we know. Is he a lunatic? Is he some sort of crazed person that's just making stuff up? Could be. Put it back. Let's start another continuum. Or is what he is saying, do we take him at face value? And does he have real information linking the Chinese government to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump? So now we've moved further out on the continuum on the big picture for July the 13th. So again, none of these by themselves really mean much of anything, even though they could lead us to information. They could lead investigators to information. But by themselves, they just don't mean a lot with the information we have right now. But you put this thing all together, I'm repeating myself now for the third or fourth time. You put it all together, it is beyond circumstantial. It is beginning to make a case that Crooks did not act alone, that he was acting with either foreign people or people within our own government, or we move one step out on the continuum. And the other possibility is that the Secret Service, members of our government, you pick the person, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, the head of the Secret Service, the head of the FBI, are all acting in concert. They did not participate working with the would-be assassin, but they were aware. They were aware, maybe not aware of Crooks, but they were aware of the threats. The threats from the Iranians, the threats that we've now learned have come from the Chinese, or the threat of some just crazed lone gunman like Crooks, and they just opened the door. They just opened the door and said, come on in. Now, let me go back and tell you why I discount that a little bit. There was only one place and one place only in that venue that Crooks could have taken up his place and gone undetected, which is exactly where he ended up. It took me 3 weeks to figure that out. And a lot of other people posting videos and analyzing the trajectory. So I don't know, folks. It's really worrisome. I think that they've done everything they could to get Trump. I personally am open to receiving information and to the possibility that this was coordinated. Maybe it falls just into that category of they let the door open. Maybe it's just gross incompetence, laziness, and complacency, but I do not believe so. Let's look at things that clearly debunked. And let me just take a break here for a second and tell you that we're very pleased to come to you every Saturday at noon on the John Fredericks Radio Network, up and down the East Coast, and on the CD Media Group. They have 13 digital properties that you can go to and follow them. They are investigative journalists who have been throttled and suppressed by big tech, but you can find them at cdm.press and thegeorgiarecord.com. And of course, as we said earlier, every week we come to you on YouTube Live, rumble.com, and getter.com. We're there live right now. And so if you're listening on the radio and you want to watch us with the video, you can come and watch us live on those streaming services. And you can also find all of our past episodes on rumble.com. Just search for John Gordon Truth. All right, so where does that leave us? First of all, let's consider a couple of things that have been debunked. Number one, I am now convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was not a second shooter. Sound analysis and expert marksmen have collaborated, and they have posted extensively on YouTube, and they have convinced me beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was not a second shooter, which does cast doubt on my somewhat strong suspicion that our government was involved in this. I've got to tell you that I think if our government was actually involved in the planning of this, that the outcome would have been much different. The fact that there was one shooter and only one shooter does, I think, cast major league doubt on whether anybody in our government participated in this. Because if you were going to organize an assassination, you'd have had two shooters, just like they did in Dallas. They had at least two in Dallas. Many reports are convincing that they had as many as six. We won't get bogged down in that, but they would have had at least two shooters in Butler, Pennsylvania, July the 13th, and they probably would have been perfectly aligned, but there is zero, and I mean zero, eyewitness testimony or any eyewitnesses who have come forward with any information that there was a second shooter. Not a plume of smoke, not a figure, not a suspicious actor, nobody. Now, there are some suspicious actors, but they weren't suspicious because they had a gun. They were suspicious because they had cameras at the right place at the wrong time, and they did not flinch There was a lady behind Trump that's been all over the internet that you can see videoing throughout the whole thing. She never ducks, she never flinches. It's almost like she was expecting it and she's videoing it. I have not been able to find any follow-up information about that anywhere. So if you have any information, you can call us at 804-778-8888, or you can interact with us on getter.com, hit the live button, look for John Gordon Truth, and you can interact with us there and comment on this. You can also comment on our YouTube channel right now as well. But then there is a guy that was at the bottom of the AGR building that videotaped the whole time. The FBI detained him. They questioned him. They have released him. There is no credible evidence to believe that he had any link to this. But those are the two people who didn't flinch. Who one guy said, "All right, something's going down. Make yourself small." He got behind a tree. He hid like any normal person would. But this one person with a uniform on from a local service station in Butler, BA, didn't flinch, and he just stood there. Well, maybe he was either really dumb or really brave, but there's been no linkage to him and this event. The idea that there was somebody on the water tower, I'm thoroughly convinced that that's not true. There was nobody on the water tower. There was no shooter on the water tower. There was no observer on the water tower. But there sure as heck should have been somebody from the Secret Service on the water tower. That was the best view anybody would have had or could have had, but there was no one there with our government or outside our government that I can determine. And there was no second window shooter, as has been theorized. The windows that were open were, as I said earlier, they were on Crooks's right, and they were sufficiently far away that those snipers could not have seen Crooks. They couldn't have seen him getting up on the building, and they couldn't have seen him as he was in his prone position. The only snipers that could have seen Crooks were the snipers that took him out, and they were on the northern building behind President Trump. They would have been to President Trump's left, or to his right, if you were looking at the stage, President Trump's left. And they were back there. They saw that they became aware of shots. They turned, they looked, they acquired the target, and they took him out. And that's why there is a pretty long delay between Crooks's shots and then that last shot that you can hear on audio tapes where the Secret Service sniper took him out. Now, one last footnote that I want to make. There was a cop, and this has been pretty well substantiated, that did try to crawl up on the building behind Crooks. That he became aware. You know, all the spectators around were signaling police and anybody whose attention they could get that there was somebody up on the roof, and they believed that he had a gun. This cop became aware of that, and he scaled the roof, got up on the roof. Crooks turned around and saw him, pointed his gun at him, and the officer fell. And I do believe that this is exactly what happened. That officer fell. And I think, folks, that in spite of the fact that he fell and supposedly broke his ankle in the process, I believe he saved President Trump's life, because he distracted Crooks just long enough that Crooks went back into the sniper position, and his adrenaline had to be pumping. His nerves had to be off the chart, and he had to have been, at that point, shaking like a leaf, because he knew he was about to lose his life and that the mission was going to fail. So he was able to get off three rounds, then recollect himself, get off 5 more rounds for a total of 8. Originally, I had some serious questions about whether those 8 cartridges were from Crooks, but I now have come to the conclusion that I believe they were. But that officer and his colleague who was helping him up on the roof, I think really are unsung heroes, because I believe that, as I said, they distracted Crooks just long enough that he couldn't maintain his composure well enough to make an accurate shot. Thank God. So while there were a lot of things that are really suspicious and a lot of things that give us a lot of pause, there's a lot to be thankful for. I do believe that God was there. I do believe that God was looking out over President Trump. I don't believe that God intended or had any idea that Corey Contemporore was going to lose his life. If he could have prevented it, he would have. God is mourning that loss as much as his family is. I think that God is grieving with all of us over the loss of that individual. But if there were other people who were complicit in this, they are guilty of felony murder, and they are also going to be doomed to spending their eternity in hell when they go meet their maker. So where does that leave us? Where are we, folks? The bottom line was that incompetence, complacency, intentional ambivalence, and neglect. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't really matter moving forward which it is. Regardless of what you conclude, it is inescapable. I believe that we can no longer trust the United States Secret Service to protect Donald Trump's life. And I believe that the president has got to make some compromises. And I am concerned that he does not appear willing to make compromises. He seems determined to continue to hold outdoor rallies. He has said so. And he is either incredibly brave, which I believe that he is, or he may have a combination of just huge optimism biased that he thinks, okay, they shot and missed, and we're going to buckle it down to the point where they can't do it a second time. But I do believe that they will continue. I do believe there will be another attempt. And I just hope and I pray that the Secret Service and the FBI are on the right side of this, and that they will intervene and that they will protect President Trump. But at a minimum, Mr. President, I beseech you, hire your own security. Get the best security known to man. And Blackwater comes to mind after their founding. And I don't know how many missions they were on. They never lost a protectee. And if not Blackwater, an organization like Blackwater that can assume a prominent role in your security, if not the lead. I have to leave that to those that know best and know better. I don't know the right answer to that, but certainly we don't want to sit here and naively believe that they won't try again, or to assume the best when we should be assuming the worst and praying for the best. So I think the next 90 days, folks, are going to be among the most turbulent that we've ever watched in our nation's history. I hope and pray for the safety of President Trump and for the presumed Democratic nominee. I pray for her safety as well. And I pray that we get this country back on track where democracy reigns and we can have a calm and logical and reasoned debate of the issues, but that we will be able to live in relative peace. Well, as we wrap up today, I do want to look towards the next 90 days. The Democratic National Convention is coming up in just a couple of weeks now, and they are convening in Chicago. I guess it's 2.5, 3 weeks away. And, about 2 years ago, maybe 3 now, into Biden's new administration, he went to Detroit and he went to the General Motors headquarters. And he stood on that stage and said that Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, had led. She was responsible for the invention and the leading our country into the acceptance of electric vehicles. And to my dismay, Mary Barra accepted the false praise. She hadn't done anything. In fact, GM is nowhere on electric cars. But stick with me here for a second, folks. She accepted the praise, and Biden just lavished it on her. And it was just a lie. She had not led. She had not ushered in the new era of electric vehicles. Not even close. But someone had, and that would have been Elon Musk. But Elon Musk doesn't tote the company line. He doesn't fall in line and accept the narratives, which I greatly admire. He didn't like the fact that Twitter was suppressing people's free speech and that they were censoring people and canceling people. So he bought Twitter, and he opened it back up. He restored the access to virtually everyone that had been banned by Twitter, including President Trump. I think the only person that he did not allow, one of the few people, I should say, that he did not allow free, unfettered access to now X, was Alex Jones, who made those very bad remarks about the high school shooting in Texas and Sandy Plains, and said it was a hoax. Well, I mean, that really set him back about 2 decades. But my point is, get back on track here, Musk doesn't fall for the narrative. He is not going to accept this radical left-wing agenda. And so now the left hate him. And after Biden went to Detroit and celebrated Mary B.S. Barra, who accepted the false praise, he then convened a summit in the White House to bring all the automakers together to discuss the transference, the transition to electric automobiles, except who? He did not invite Elon Musk, who is probably on the entire planet the most praiseworthy person to be recognized. Now, I know a lot of you don't like that, the talk about electric vehicles. All right, we have a difference of opinion on that one, okay? We'll come back to that at a later time. But the unmistakable conclusion is, other than the original founders of Tesla, who get a large lion's share of credit that were not able to make Tesla a sustainable company, they sold it to Musk, and Musk made Tesla what it is today. He is responsible for bringing the electric vehicle to fruition in a sustainable business model. Now, you'd also have to give credit to the people in China that have done the same thing at BYD. They have a sustainable business model with electric vehicles, but most of their electric vehicles are hybrids. All right, I'm getting off track. My point is this: they shunned Musk. They ostracized Musk. They alienated Elon Musk. Big, big mistake. So this guy on YouTube put together a parody on Kamala Harris. And Musk saw it, and this parody that had gone nowhere, it had like maybe 10 or 13,000 views. Musk repeated it on X, and it went viral, and it's now got over 130 million views. And I'm John Gordon, and I've told you the truth today, and I'm going to leave you with this parody. It may be the beginning of the end of Kamala Harris's candidacy for president. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll see you right back here next Saturday on The Truth.
I, Kamala Harris, am your Democrat candidate for president because Joe Biden finally exposed his senility at the debate. Thanks, Joe. I was selected because I am the ultimate diversifier. I'm both a woman and a person of color. So if you criticize anything I say, you're both sexist and racist. I may not know the first thing about running the country, but remember, that's a good thing if you're a deep state puppet. I had 4 years under the tutelage of the ultimate deep state puppet, a wonderful mentor, Joe Biden. Joe taught me rule number 1, carefully hide your total incompetence. I take insignificant things and I discuss them as if they're significant. And I believe that exploring the significance of the insignificant is in itself significant. Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time, and there is such great significance to the passage of time. Another trick is trying to sound black. I pretend to celebrate Kwanzaa, and in my speeches, I always do my best Barack Obama impression. So hear me when I say,
I know Donald Trump's type.
And okay, look, maybe my work addressing the root causes of the border crisis were catastrophic, but my knowledge of international politics is truly shocking.
The United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. It is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
And just remember, when voting this November, it is important to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And by what has been, I mean Joe Biden. Do you think the country went to over the past 4 years? You ain't seen nothing yet.
You've been listening to The Truth with John Gordon. To connect with John and get more of the truth, follow and subscribe to @JohnGordonTruth on Getter, Rumble, X, Facebook, and YouTube. The Truth with John Gordon is a production of John Gordon and the John Fredericks Media Network. All rights reserved.